Across Colorado, there's a real battle brewing. It's not being fought with sticks and stones, though. It's being fought with ballot measures and city charters. You've got the state government on one side pushing hard for more housing to deal with a pretty crippling affordability crisis. And on the other side, you have local voters, and they are pushing back hard. So let's get into this clash of wills and figure out what it all means for the future of housing in Colorado.
It seems like it should be a simple goal, right? I mean, pretty much everyone agrees that housing is just way too expensive. So why on earth is it so incredibly difficult to actually build more of it? That's the big question we're going to unpack today, and we're going to use Colorado's recent elections as a perfect case study. All right, here's the game plan. First, we'll look at the state's big housing push, then the local blockade it's running into. We'll dive into one suburb that's sending some really mixed signals, unpack the whole density versus character debate, and then wrap up with what this all means for, well, the future of the backyard. Okay, so let's set the stage. Colorado, like a lot of places right now, is in a serious housing crunch. The state government, with Governor Jared Polis at the helm, basically decided, all right, enough is enough. We need a big top-down solution to this. So their strategy is that classic carrot and stick approach. And the carrot is a big one. We're talking about $280 million in funding for towns that get on board with the state's pro-housing policies. The stick, of course, is the fear of getting left behind, missing out on all that crucial funding while your neighboring towns move ahead. So what does getting on board actually mean? Well, the state is pushing for three big reforms. First up, making it way faster and easier to get permits for denser housing, especially near public transit. Second, getting rid of old rules that force builders to create a certain number of parking spots for every new unit. And third, legalizing things like backyard cottages or granny flats. You've probably heard them called accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. The whole point here is pretty simple. More housing options and get them built faster.
But, and this is a big but, here's where the whole plan hits a wall. See, state-level goals are one thing, but local votes, that's a whole other ballgame. In some of the wealthy resort towns, where the housing crisis for actual workers is off the charts, voters went to the polls and delivered a very, very clear message. Let's take a look at the famous ski town of Telluride. The town council wanted to raise its debt limit specifically to fund more affordable housing for the local workforce. Makes sense, right? Well, the voters didn't think so. They shot down the idea, with almost 56% voting no, effectively blocking the measure. And here's the really wild part. The town manager actually pitched this measure as a way to protect the town's community character and keep workers from being priced out. But the voters rejected the very tool that was designed to do just that. It just shows you what a huge disconnect there was. Meanwhile, over in Estes Park, voters dealt a sort of double whammy to new development. First, they gave neighbors a powerful new veto. Now, any rezoning requires a 2/3 approval from nearby property owners, which is a huge hurdle. And then they took a tool away by getting rid of density bonuses that encourage developers to build the exact kind of workforce housing the town desperately needs. Now, if you think that's complicated, just wait. The situation in the suburbs is even more tangled. Let's look at the Denver suburb of Littleton, which is just a fascinating and frankly confusing case of a community that seems to be completely at war with itself over housing. Okay, so a local homeowner group called Rooted in Littleton managed to get an amendment on the ballot. The goal was to limit density and walk back some of the city's recent pro-housing changes. And it passed. 54% of voters decided to change the city's charter to put the brakes on density. So that's a clear win for the anti-density side, right? Well, not exactly. Here is the paradox. On the very same ballot, voters overwhelmingly re-elected Mayor Kyle Schlachter, who is a huge champion of adding more housing. And he didn't just barely win either. He won by a wider margin than the anti-density amendment did. So voters said no to density, but then turned around and said yes to the pro-density mayor. It's a textbook mixed message. So what in the world is going on here? To really understand these votes, we need to zoom out a bit and define the terms of this debate. Because this is a fight that's happening all across the country, and it often boils down to two competing ideas: density versus character. First, you have to understand this acronym NIMBY. You've probably heard it before. It stands for Not in My Backyard. And it perfectly describes the feeling of residents who oppose a new development project specifically because it's close to them, even if they agree, in theory, that more housing is needed somewhere else. Now, from the opposition's point of view, this isn't just about zoning codes. It's about protecting their community.
And this quote from that Littleton homeowner group just captures it perfectly. They don't see the mayor's plan as a gentle evolution. They see it as a threatening mass density that would totally destroy the town's small-town charm. But the people who support these changes, they use completely different language. They talk about creating gentle density or adding missing middle housing. Things like duplexes or small apartment buildings that can fit right into existing neighborhoods. The idea is just to give more people more options. So you see, one person's mass density is another person's gentle solution. So let's bring it all home. Beyond all the political drama and these confusing election results, what are the actual real-world consequences? What does this all really mean for the future of housing? In Littleton, the effect was immediate and very real. The city had worked to make it easier for homeowners to build those small backyard units we talked about. But because of that charter amendment that passed, any homeowner who wants to build one now has to go through a variance process, which is this costly, time-consuming, bureaucratic nightmare. The very barrier the city had just removed was put right back in place by the voters. And experts are really worried this could be part of a bigger trend. As one commercial real estate director put it, the fear is that not in my backyard is escalating. It's becoming not in my city. And that could have massive consequences, especially for, say, an aging population who might want to downsize but still stay in the community they love. And that really leaves us with the fundamental question at the heart of all this. On one side, you have a desperate, undeniable need for more housing. And on the other, you have a powerful, deeply felt desire to preserve the character of existing neighborhoods. When those two forces collide at the ballot box, something has to give. The question is, what?